Call to order their City Council work session for Tuesday, October 8th, 2019 is now 5 o'clock. City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstead.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Tim Riepel.
Here.
Tim Johnson. Mark Demers.
Present.
Does the term quorum. Number 1, update from Heritage Village. Teri, Hammarback. Teri? Want to come up?
Actually, if you want to sit at the microphone, because then the streaming will pick it up. That'd be great.
Good evening. For those of you who do not know who I am, I'm Teri Hammarback. I volunteer at the East Grand Forks Heritage Village, which is, I guess it's becoming a passion of mine. And I first and foremost want to thank all of you who came and helped us at Heritage Days. We were in dire need. We have a hard time finding volunteers, and we really, really appreciate that you came and helped us. Saturday was a little sketchy, I thought, but we didn't realize we were going to have that many people, which is a nice problem to have, but thank you very, very much. Sunday was a little better. Our Heritage Days is one of our activities that actually helps bring in money so we can pay our bills. And there is nobody out there at the Heritage Center who is paid. Everybody is a volunteer, and they actually have a love for the place. And I'm sure you're tired of hearing about the Heritage Center because I'm sure Dale talks it up quite a bit, which I do appreciate. But just in case you don't know what we do out there, our mission statement is to preserve and bring to life the history of the Red River Valley. And it dates back to, we have homes out there from 1871 all the way up. And it's just a wonderful place to be. In your packet, I have given you one of these which shows you what we actually do. We have got community organizations that use the Heritage Foundation or the facilities. We have got heritage tours that go from anywhere from preschoolers all the way up to the Northland Tech College comes out for tours out there and for information. We have Boy Scouts hold their... Did any of you make it for the Boy Scouts when they did the Civil War reenactments? It was phenomenal, unbelievable. It was wonderful. We also have our special events out there, and these, besides Heritage Days, which is $5 to get in, for a button, we have our Haunted Heritage Village, our Christmas Festival. We've got our Winter Fun Day if it doesn't get too cold. And these are all free events that we put on out there. We ask that people bring hopefully a canned good to share with our food bank. But I just wanted to let you guys know we do a lot of good for our community. We bring in people from, I've given tours to people from Norway, 3 different groups of people from Norway, China, Japan. It's been amazing that when they come this direction to visit the university, they come out to our Heritage Center. And they really, and unless I'm missing the boat here, they really seem to have a good time and enjoy it. I'm not going to talk much longer. I wanted to bring up that we do have the sawmill out there that we're adding to. Thank you to Randy Driscoll's seed money, so to speak. And I think I put in your packets a little bit about it, and it's from here. It's just amazing. It's amazing. I'm not going to read it, of course. Everybody here knows how to read. But we run our place solely on volunteers and a couple of our special events such as Heritage Days and our Fun Night. And we seem to be doing pretty good. But I just needed to come and thank you for your help. And I really would love for you guys to do it again next year. And if you want to serve something different, you let us know. We'll get it ready for you. We'll get it set up. But we would like to know a little sooner than, we were really hoping that we would know who was going to run the burger stand like by January. So if you guys would consider doing it again, I will definitely get it into the poster that come and talk to your alderman and give him your ideas for our fair city. So anyway, but thank you. And if any of you are not members and would like to be members, I'm going to leave these with Dale. He's going to hit me later, but these are the for our memberships. And just fill it out, mail it, or give it to Dale. He'll take care of it. But thank you so much for your help, and hopefully you'll do it again next year.
There.
Thank you. I mean, you're here thanking us for helping out on your event. Thank you for all that you do for our community. I was back there about a month ago for a wedding that took place, and it was a perfect venue for a wedding. The big hall inside was nice for the meal that took place. The wedding was outside and amidst all of the old homes and log cabin and everything. And thank you that it's a magnet. Your big event is a magnet for this whole region. And there's always something new. I've been to probably 30 or 40 Heritage Days, but every time you go out there, you see a little something that you missed before. In this year's hot dish contest that y'all let me judge, I'll probably pay money to judge that again if I could. We had close to a dozen hot dishes this year, I think, or 15 or some number. And I mean, after about 10 hot dishes, it's pretty nice, actually, all those hot dishes. And so just thank you for all of it, and whatever you need from us, kind of keep us posted. As for, like you said, as it's coming up, if there's something that you need, you've plugged us in on the food stand, and if there's something else, by all means, let us know. Glad to be part of it.
Awesome. Just, by the way, that lovely hall is also the spot for community ed wrestling because now it's heated, so it's perfect. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to number 2, update from jurisdictional transfer of Business Highway 2. Mr. Emery.
Thank you, Mr. President. Got Darren Lash with MnDOT here again. Again, just kind of a follow-up from when we first brought this forward at the July 23rd work session in regards to MnDOT approaching the city about a potential jurisdictional transfer of Business Highway 2 and Demers Avenue. And again, what we'd be looking at is the city would be taking over Business Highway 2 from the intersection of Demers Avenue and 4th south along Business 2 all the way out to Highway 2. And then MnDOT would be taking over Demers Avenue again from the intersection of Demers and 4th out in front of City Hall here on Demers Avenue, and then all the way out to Highway 2. Again, right now, some of the reasons MnDOT has approached the city in regards to this is because the Minnesota legislature has set aside funding for jurisdictional transfers that can be used to restore some of these trunk highway systems, such as Business Highway 2. So after our discussions at the July 23rd meeting, there was some questions raised that we maybe didn't have all the answers for you guys at the time. So in the RCA, I've kind of listed them. So I think Darren and I will probably kind of tag team them. But so the first question that was raised, it says, with the additional mileage, will our overall state aid system mileage be able to be increased? With the additional 1.6 miles of state aid roadway, we would generate about $38,000 annually in additional state aid funds. However, being it is trunk highway turnback, that mileage cannot be used in the calculation because we can have up to 20% of our mileage can be state aid. So that additional 1.6 miles we'd be taking on can't be used in that calculation. But again, we would receive state aid payments annually for that stretch of road. And then maybe I'll just jump down to number 4. There's a question about the potential for urbanizing Business Highway 2 kind of at the east end of the corridor, maybe making that more of an urban section with curb and gutter, storm sewer. Darren and I have talked about that. I don't think MnDOT is really in favor of having to pay for that. I mean, it's something if the city took it over, I mean, you can do whatever we want. We can urbanize it, put in storm sewer, but I think there would be a local cost if we were to look at doing that. So And then a couple of the other questions, what is the anticipated additional service life for Business Highway 2? And then are there any potential safety improvements to the corridor that are required? I think I did include in the packet a letter from J.T. Anderson, the district engineer within the state, but also maybe just have Darren kind of speak on behalf of kind of those two questions. So. Yeah,
and just to touch on the urbanizing question of, typically what we look for when we're going to urbanize a corridor, we look for, are there pedestrians and bikes using that corridor? What's kind of the development pattern on there? Is there a lot of business activity, a lot of accesses along that corridor? Is there drainage issues? Is the density of development causing a restriction on the ditch? So we have drainage challenges where you need a storm sewer. And we kind of see there's some need to extend that urban section further to the east. But kind of looking at once you kind of get into kind of the Crystal Sugar area, the industrial area there, it doesn't make a lot of sense in our opinion to urbanize that. So that was kind of my take on that and how we would address it in other communities. And that's kind of when we negotiate in any type of turn back here, that's kind of what we want to be looking at is kind of we want to I guess reimburse the city to put that highway back into pristine conditions, but we can't go above and beyond what we would typically do in a town like that. As far as remaining service life, I had our materials engineer look at that. We also talked with our maintenance folks. There isn't a lot of remaining service life left in the road right now. We measure that based on it's called the Ride Quality Index, and that's right at 2.5 right now. And kind of statewide, that's kind of our rule of thumb. If it drops below 2.5, the traveling public, they're starting to give us phone calls. They're starting to notice it. It's not necessarily meaning the road is shot or even that you're going to have tons of potholes and things like that, but that's kind of our early warning that the public is going to notice that and start complaining about that. So in our measures, it doesn't have any remaining service life after 2020. Our materials engineer had some different recommendations for what you could do with that road, and it ranges from you could do a thin mill and overlay and get 10, 12 years out of that, and you can continue to do that. The reason you're only getting 10 to 12 years is because you have a really old section of concrete underneath that road. And it's hard, it's probably a hodgepodge at this point, but there's 90-year-old concrete in there. And I'm sure certain parts of it have been replaced, but in the areas where you have that older concrete, that's just a lot of mass, and that's likely pretty cracked up. And that mass just reflects through no matter what type of overlay you put on that concrete mass is going to dominate the cracking pattern. So those cracks are just going to reflect back through. He also had kind of that mid-range mill and overlay where you'd mill it down to the concrete and then put asphalt back on, and then the full reconstruct. And kind of when we were looking at a cost of the turn back, we'd want to reimburse the city for that full reconstruct. So that because otherwise you're going to have some ongoing issues with that old concrete. So that's kind of, and I guess the drainage infrastructure, kind of in that urban section, that was all put in the early 70s or mid 70s. So that's pushing the envelope there to, typically once you get over 50 years, you're going to start seeing problems, and likely it needs to get replaced in the next 20 years is kind of what we recommended. On the safety end, we did identify a significant amount of crashes right at that first intersection, 4th and Demers. There's 46 crashes there, 11 that resulted in injuries. That's over a 10-year period, keep in mind. But that's above what we would expect to see. And there is some issues with just kind of turning movements there. And we have the trucks clipping the signal poles and causing some issues there. So we kind of have that identified when we do the signal replacement project, which we have tentatively scheduled for 2024, and trying to make some improvements on that radius. We'll investigate that a little bit more, but kind of in regard to the turn back, that intersection's still going to be a split between the city and MnDOT. We would still have two legs of that intersection, and the city would have two legs of that intersection. So yes, there's a safety issue there, but we'll still work together as a partner to try to address that as we can. As far as the rest of the corridor, there's 59 crashes over a 10-year period, and that's over a 2-mile corridor. We didn't see any major crash clusters. The biggest one was, I think, 9 crashes at the other signal. But that's, as far as signals go, we typically do see elevated crashes, and that's below average of what you'd expect. And then there was another small crash cluster at I think Central Avenue, and that. And they didn't give me a number on that, but I think it was less than 5. And the best we could tell is there's a little bit of curve, and there's some sightline issues there that you may be able to address with an urban reconstruct if you're narrowing up the curb lines, or maybe you can improve those sight lines. But that's kind of, I guess. Also, we talked with our maintenance group, and one of the other issues out there is our last overlay, we just overlaid the center 24. And we didn't do the shoulders, so they're having some issues out on the shoulders and the approaches. So they've overlaid some, but they haven't. There's more to do on that, and that'd probably be an ongoing issue that you would expect to see. And then they mentioned that they haven't jetted out the culverts in a while, so that'll probably be coming due at some point soon.
So, kind of with that, Darren and I have kind of discussed scope of the work, and again, we kind of looking at it as probably a full reconstruction, and I guess we haven't worked out all the details yet, but we're estimating to totally reconstruct that total 1.6 miles. We're probably in that $9 to $10.5 million range. And again, with the transfer, potential jurisdictional transfer, there are a couple options. The city could take just a one-time lump sum payment, not do anything with the corridor, could utilize those funds on your other state aid streets if you wanted to. Or basically, again, between the city and MnDOT, we'd develop a project, we'd put together plans and specs, and the city would lead a project for the reconstruction of that, just like we would do any other state aid project within the community. So, that's another option. Then you would basically, when it's turned over to the city, you'd basically have a brand new street section. And then the other option is always do nothing. Like we said, there is funding out there right now to be able to do this project, do a complete reconstruction. I know Darren and I have talked, and if we don't go down this road, the project may be, if MnDOT does anything, may be limited to just again, just a mill and overlay, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, probably 5, 10 years. But
yeah, we currently have it slated in about 10 years, and I guess ideally we would like to do something bigger, but it is getting more and more of a challenge to fund those bigger projects, and we may be forced to, just look at that mill and overlay, just keep it drivable and functional.
So with that, I don't know if you want to go through, I did have that memo that we had last time in there. Like anything else, there's advantages, disadvantages to everything. So, maybe at this time we'll even just kind of open it up to any questions, you guys have for myself, or especially Darren, so.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Bitter.
Darren, when are you doing the Highway 2 project out that way?
We're doing Highway 2 in 2021.
Okay. So if we go forward with this, I would say let's not do it until after 2021.
Unless it's included in the cost.
Correct.
Yeah, and likely, kind of the next steps here would be if the council wants to entertain moving into negotiations with that, we'd like to have the council pass a resolution. Then we would enter into negotiations and kind of lock in, what route we want to go. Do we want to go that reimbursable route or the in lieu payment, where it's just a lump sum payment, and kind of negotiate the terms of that agreement. And then we can lock in the funding. Likely the funding, we're probably out 3-4 years with that turn back program to even transfer those funds. So, it's kind of hurry up and then wait. I guess I'd like to, the $10 million, I'd like to get that locked in as soon as possible, because there are a number of other these turnbacks getting negotiated, and that account has $50 million a year, $25 million towards Greater Minnesota, $25 million towards Metro. So the quicker we can get that locked in, the earlier we can proceed with the project. But I wouldn't anticipate anything for probably 4 to 5 years out at this point.
Anybody else have any questions at this time? Dale?
Thank you. Just sitting here and listening to all this stuff and talking about this, we want to trade a half a mile for 2.1 miles. I just feel like there's something that we're being missed or not being told or something why we'd want to do this. I don't know what it is or why I'm thinking that, but I am. And I think personally, taking over that 2.1 miles would be more of a liability than an asset to us, because we'd have to, 9 times out of 10, we're going to hire more people, we're going to have more equipment, we're going to have to, it just doesn't seem to me like that stretch of road would really benefit East Grand Forks to me. I don't know why, but I just, it's been there for how many years now, and there's really been no new activity out there whatsoever, other than Mayo adding on out there in their business, and Lumber Mart putting up a building, but there's been nothing new out there. I just don't see anything it's just going to cost us money, I think. That's my feeling on it. I know we're talking about doing this and doing that, and you talked about concrete under there. It's maybe 90 years old, and how the the drainage and everything. It's going to have something done with that. It just sounds like to me it's going to cost East Grand Forks a lot of money. So,
and kind of the goal of this is to get the city the funding to take care of all of those needs, and that's and I'm looking at this as as a transportation system. This is the best way for me to bring in these type of dollars into the community at this time with the transportation funding that I have available. And so I don't want to set the city up for big expenses later on, and that's kind of why we're being upfront. There are issues out there. It does need to get reconstructed, and we're struggling to get enough funding to keep up with our highway system, and this is a way that the state can get some of these projects reconstructed, but then not take on that long-term liability. And yes, the city is taking long-term wise, you're taking on another 1.6 miles of road. And you're getting compensated with, on the state aid side, that $38,000 a year. And you kind of got to weigh and balance that. Is that worth the maintenance cost and any kind of future overlays? But in the near term, I think this is a win for East Grand Forks. In the long term, that's kind of up to you guys to weigh whether it's worth it.
Ben?
So first of all, I'll say from my point of view, you are being very, very candid with us. You're giving us all the information we need to make an informed choice. There really are some pros and cons here. The paranoid side of me is also just sitting back here going, I'm having a hard time seeing the upside. I definitely can see the potential for a downside, as you say, long-term cost-wise. But I'm having a little trouble seeing the upside, short and long-term for us, other than it will be really nice if it is fully reconstructed and arguably very low maintenance for a very long time after that. I think development-wise along that corridor, there's been a fair amount of activity, a lot of the ag stuff on the west side. Todd's really spruced up nicely, like you said, Mayo and Lumber Mart. I feel like that's going to happen either way, whether we own it or whether it's still a state highway coming through. I think that's going to happen either way. So my gut says that's probably about a wash there for the development. And I guess I kind of like it being a business highway, right? Would it lose that designation if it came back to us? It would no longer be Business Highway 2?
Yeah, likely Demers Avenue would become Business Highway 2.
So I guess I don't mind that designation. You're coming along Highway 2 and you have an opportunity to turn off and come through our city on a Business Highway 2. It feels like a nice connection also to Highway 2 for people coming through. So we'd lose maybe a little there, maybe not, but those are I share your concern. I like your candor. I like that you're giving us the information we need to make an informed choice. I really do trust you that you're being thorough and comprehensive. And now we get to decide, does the upside outweigh the downside?
One thing I look at, I guess one thing I kind of envision too is I think, you know, if we were to do this project, I think we'd be looking at from Demers and 4th, probably the entire section out to probably about 8th Avenue Northwest, just east of Northland Custom Woodworking. Again, that entire corridor I think would be urbanized, curb and gutter. I expect we would probably put in concrete pavement there. So the beauty of concrete pavement is we're not going to have as much maintenance as we are with asphalt. And if you look at it, we're generating $38,000 annually. So if you look at that over a 20-year time frame, that's $760,000. That's easily going to pay for any mill and overlay, seal coat type of projects that we would have to do, let's say from 8th out to Highway 2 again. So again, a lot of that, and that's the purpose of the maintenance funds, is to help you pay for those maintenance type projects in the future. So I do feel, you know, that you would probably generate enough money to pay for a lot of that maintenance.
Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. The $10 million, $9 to $10.5 million construction fund, is that, how far into town does that go for reconstruction?
It basically went all the way up to the intersection of Demers and 4th, and all the way up along Business Highway 2, all the way up to Highway 2.
So
it's that entire 2.1 miles.
Okay. Could you, one of the things I would be interested in seeing is what, say you just took a $10 million or estimated $11 million project and assess that out for the properties along that corridor, see what it would cost. I guess if you're going to do it, if we adhere to our current policy, we would assess it. Now, knowing that we have this chunk of money, we could offset that potentially. But even if we didn't do this in year 2022, 25, at some point, we're going to have some understanding of what an assessed cost for reconstruction is going to be for those people, even if it's 40 years down the road. We have to have some potential. And part of the reason why I say that is because, especially once you get past the tracks, you really start, you know, it's going to be crystal sugar, and then city's got some land there, you know, who's all going to be, and these are bigger tracks, so we would know what that impact is to those people. You know what I mean? I agree. I think it's a tough thing to do, to change away from some, you know, to take on a responsibility. Are there opportunities here? Yes. I mean, I could see putting that $10 million, if that's the number, into a revolving fund, you know, that would generate $300,000 a year, or, you know, at 3%, you know, that would be a lot of money. So over 10 years, you would have $3 million to match that, and you wouldn't necessarily touch the principal. You could have that ongoing fund for maintenance in town or whatever. So, like I said, there are some ways you could do it, I think, but it does shift the burden of risk to the city. But I think if you're creative, maybe there's some ways that you could work with that. Understanding, though, it's hard to have this conversation just within this room because potentially there's a pretty large impact to some industrial and commercial businesses along that route. And there's residences out there, too, that are right along that route, too. So it'd be interesting to know what that and like I said, don't spend,
Yep.
it wouldn't have to be like a full assessment, but you can pretty quickly figure out what it would be divided out.
Well, and one thing too, and I don't have our current assessment policy in front of us, and I mean, we've had a lot of discussions on reconstruction projects and how we may or may not want to assess them, but I do believe off the top of my head is in our assessment policy, it does say for state aid reconstruction projects, they will be assessed at 30%, I believe is what it states.
My memory also.
So I guess if we were going to go down that road, go through that analysis, if we're going to follow our policy, we'd probably have to look at assessing 30% then.
But then figure out, okay, now you got 30%, what would be the city's portion of that? How would you finance that? And what's that? Say it's a 10-year.
Typically, that comes out of the state aid fund, the money that we get from the state aid portion of that. And so if it would be that one, that'd be a significant amount we'd have to have in reserve for paying for that state aid portion of it.
And then it would be interesting to also, kind of in a related note, is to know what the maturity is on our 23rd project, when that will start, when we'll have that paid off and able to access those funds again.
I can get you that information. I don't know it off the top of my head, but.
Because if you're talking about, if it was 10 to 15 years, all of a sudden now you've got that on top of another, you've got more state construction dollar or state aid construction dollars that you have to.
Yeah,
to
because
deal
part of
with
that
as well.
payment for 23rd right now does come out of our state aid allocation dollars every year.
Yeah, our
Yep.
construction dollars.
Yep.
So.
Anything else, Mark?
No, just that, like I said, I share everybody's fears. I think you don't want to sell the cow and buy the milk, right? But there's part of me that says that there is some opportunity that we could be a little more creative, a little more flexible with our how we finance things, how we allocate money for streets and transportation in town. I think I'm at least intrigued.
Golsted?
I was just going to say, assuming they go down the road of passing this resolution, is it contingent upon successful negotiations? I mean, because it's very easy to say, okay, you've already said you're going to do it, now we're going to do it, and you've got the upper hand on the negotiations being the state of Minnesota, so.
Yeah, the initial resolution does not bind the council in Grand Forks to approving an agreement for a jurisdictional exchange. It just basically lets us know that the city's serious about this, that we're going to invest some time into this. Ultimately, the city would pass a resolution approving the agreement that would have the negotiated costs, the contract terms, and that would be kind of more the official document for transfer.
And then the transfer of the money, you're saying is 4 or 5 years out. What happens if the construction costs go skyrocketing and you've accepted $10 million as your number?
Yeah, and that's kind of where we look at, the city can go the reimbursable route, where no matter what the construction cost comes in at, it's all fully reimbursed. You get that road fully reconstructed at no risk to the city, and then the city takes it over. So that's a way to protect your risk. The in lieu payment is, you're taking a risk. If those prices go up, the city may have to pay out of pocket, but if prices are down, or if you downscope it, the city can have some additional dollars to spend on other roads.
Thank you.
So in the event you were going to do the payment, as we work on project costs and stuff, I mean, would you apply some type of inflation factor knowing that it is going to be 5 years out?
Yeah, I think that would be prudent.
Okay.
Question I think of is, the way the road sits currently, is there anything that prohibits any of the businesses or any property owner from doing anything that they could do if the city owned it? Is there anything right now that states says you have it, you can't do this on this road as a property owner, but if the city owns it, we have the capability of doing something?
Yeah, I think there's more flexibility when it's a city-owned street. I think advertising, as far as advertising on state right-of-way or along state right-of-way, there's additional restrictions. I don't know how impactful those are, especially in town. That's a lot of times more on the rural stretches.
And the question would be too, is there anything that from the businesses out there that they wanted to do that they couldn't do because it was under city ownership? Does anybody know of any?
The first one that comes to mind, and the only one that jumps up to is maybe access points, new accesses to the roadway.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what the difference, off the top of my head, the difference is between what the city allows for the access, spacing of accesses versus what MnDOT would.
I'm just trying to think of things that would benefit the property owners from letting them be able to grow and prosper if we had it, rather than the state owning it.
I generally, if I remember correctly, I think the city is usually more lenient on how many accesses you can have versus what MnDOT has, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
It would still be part of our state aid system, and I know some of our state aid system, I mean, you do have controlled access on some of those roads, do you know?
It's all dependent on how it's classified.
Okay.
And it's classified based on a couple of different things. Tonnage, ADT, those types of things. Obviously wouldn't be a local street, so it wouldn't have unlimited access. So we're maybe looking at minor arterial is, I think, 660 feet every access. We'd keep the ones that we had. If it was a major, it'd be 880, a little more. So
Yeah,
it's
right
really,
now.
yeah,
Right
it
now it's
would be
class.
really dependent on how it, we could talk to Earl with the MPO to see kind of how that would be classified.
Right
as a
now, it's
city
classified, I
street.
think minor arterial right now is how it's classified.
Yeah, so 660
And that
then.
probably stays the same.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of ways that this would benefit the city and the property owners, as business owners. And they share the same questions or concerns that what it's going to cost us in the future, but you also want to maybe look at what's going to be beneficial for everybody. And maybe we need to sit down and talk to the business owners out there and lay it out to them too, and see if there's something that we don't know they've been trying to do or whatever. Or no, we don't want it this way because of this. And, go back to Mr. Demers's comment about, down the road, there's going to be specials going to be assessed down that road then. So just different things that maybe make them aware of it and have them be part of the discussion, I think is probably prudent. Mayor?
Just two thoughts. We're talking about what might create an advantage to the local businesses. If it doesn't meet the criteria with MnDOT to make it an urban section, we could have all different criteria, right? So we could make it an urban section whenever we wanted, if it was ours. So that would be an advantage of taking it. The other thing that would limit how many access points I would think is on the west with the rail crossing. I'm not sure you'd pick up a lot more private rail crossings or what the process is to go through that. So you also have that little hurdle to get over, is the creation of more private rail crossings over on that side.
Have anything, Mr. Emery?
So I guess at this point, Darren, I think I do even have in the packet kind of a sample resolution. So at this point, like you said, until you get an agreement in place, you're not really locked into anything at this point. The resolution is just letting the state know that the city's kind of interested in kind of moving forward, continuing discussions. I guess is that kind of the next step, or?
Yeah, I think, I think we've shared, pretty close to the dollar amounts, the issues out there. And I would say, if you're leaning towards no, but you're still thinking about it, I wouldn't recommend passing that resolution. But if you're serious about moving ahead with the jurisdictional exchange and, or at least on the fence, I think taking that next step, and then we can get some clear dollar amounts and clear timelines set, and we can nail down a few more of those unknowns.
I don't see a problem moving forward with it and having the discussions with everybody. We're not being locked into anything. It's just that I think we just need to, like I said, talk to the business owners and Mr. DeMers.
Thank you. I'd agree. I think the first step, even before you get to a resolution, would be always to have a mock assessment hearing with these folks that are going to be along this corridor. You know, mark up a assessment role that would be, you know, something that would reflect our current policy, I guess, and bring people in. Actually have us, you know, have it be an invited meeting for anybody on here, knowing that this isn't, you know, put a big stamp, this is not a bill kind of thing on it. But I would bet we'd get some pretty candid views pretty quickly on what.
So I understand, are you looking for a mock assessment role for total reconstruction? If we took the cash and maybe had to reconstruct in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, that would.
Not mill and overlay?
No, to me, that's the most likely scenario. I mean, I guess you can always just mill and overlay it, but you're kind of, at some point, you're going to have to rebuild it. I mean, whether if you mill and overlay it and 10, 15 years later, then you're going to have to either really mill and overlay it or you know, that time period that you're going to have to mill and overlay is going to keep shrinking until you're just going to have to build it. So I would say aim with the more expensive project, I think, is at least then you're not trying to buffalo anybody. You know, I think, and like I said, have an open meeting, invite people along the corridor, send a letter out, tell them very specifically, this is not an actual project, this is a potential project in the future. You know, lay out what we're trying to do and bring them in and say, we'll have a work session meeting where it'll be like, we could even have it as a hearing, you know, let people voice what their opinions are. You know, I think that's the only way to get it out in the public too, because we can also all hear kind of anecdotally from people, oh yeah, we'd like to do that because we'd like to see this, until, you know, they don't have to be on the record saying, oh yeah, I'm for a $300,000 assessment or something like that. So, but I guess that would be my suggestion as a first step, even before we got to the resolution. I think you could do that and still be plenty far out ahead of this thing.
Honestly, don't know how in good conscience we take a lump sum of cash roughly equal to the value of replacing the street, and then in 5 to 10 years assess them for replacing the street. I don't know how you take a lump sum of cash intended for replacing a street and you assess your residents. I wouldn't be in favor of it, I'll just say that.
Well, that was my question for Darren, is I don't know that, yeah, the city can take $10 million and then turn around and assess $3 million. I don't know if you could.
That wouldn't be right.
I guess one thing I want to clarify is the 10 million would go into the state aid roads account. So the city can use that on other state aid routes. You don't have to use that on this route, but it would go into that state aid account. You know, once that happens, yeah, I don't think we have any jurisdiction to require it. I think the city has the option to do assessments after that.
Okay.
Wouldn't sit well with me. I'll go on record and say it wouldn't sit well. You take cash equal to street replacement and then you assess. I'd have a problem with that.
If you went the reimbursable route,
yeah,
then we would have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Mr. Helms.
Thank you. I have to agree with Mr. DeMers here. I think we bring people in because honestly, we just approved that Mayo Manufacturing for their new building and everything, and I'm just thinking that had they known that we were going to do something like this, they probably wouldn't have put that new building up. They might have done something different, and that kind of bothers me. And the other thing is, as he just said, we're not going to get $10 million in East Grand Forks checking account. That's just not going to happen. The state ain't going to give that to anybody. It's going to be there maybe to use, but it's not going to be in our account, as Mr. DeMers was talking about, to draw the interest on, which I think he was thinking that, but I think you just clarified that for him. I don't think we want to approve this resolution the way it reads here right now, to me, because it says enter into an agreement. That bothers me because that tells me that I think we sign that, we might enter into an agreement with the state, and I don't know if we're ready to do that yet.
Yeah, I think the city's got the right to kind of revise that. That was a template.
And I've suggested that to Mr. Murphy yesterday when we were in our staff meeting.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything right now? I think, Steve, you got things they need to maybe
Oh,
put together.
Yeah. And I think, whether you assess it or not, I mean, I think having that meeting with those business owners is good either way. Because like you said, you want to have everyone informed and so.
I guess the one other thing I would point out is that the state would be taking on that half mile of demers. So those residents would, would now be required for any kind of state permitting, access permits, drainage permits. But they would also not be exposed to any future assessments and things like that. So I guess just keep that in mind in your decision making as well.
Well, because that's what I was kind of getting at. If this road goes south, it's yours. You got to fix it, right?
Right now.
With business too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's, it's our responsibility. It's in our jurisdiction.
Okay, appreciate it. Good information, good discussion. Thanks. Anything else, Mr. Emery? Or?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, move on to number 3, discussion on the Green Step City Program. Mr. Hatcher.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm here on behalf of the East Grand Forks Water and Light discussion in regards to the Green Step City Program. The commission moved forward as me being the Green Step City Coordinator if the city chooses to do so in moving forward with this program. Just a little bit of background, beginning of this year, Council Member Demers discussed a little bit about research and some more information about this Green Step City program. So what we did is we contacted the Minnesota Clean Energy Resource Team, Joel, to have a presentation done in July. So he came into one of our commission meetings and had a little bit of a discussion presentation for us to gain more information, and that's when we move forward to discuss a little bit about our plan through the city here. Just a further background, also it correlates, basically the Green Step City, it correlates with the 2007 Next Generation Act in the state of Minnesota, the goal to reduce carbon emissions, and also it is a way to promote sustainability, quality of life. And it has about 29 best practices on how to do so for your city. There's about 129 cities involved in this Green Step City program, including Crookston, Warren, Moorhead. It has a 5-step program. The first step is to pass this resolution that's listed in the packet. Step 2 is passing 8 best practices that they have included in their program. Step 3, which is the discussion with the City of Plymouth about that article that was included in the packet, is to do the additional 16 best practices, which there are some requirements, which is what kind of drew the skepticism from Plymouth. Step 4, there's a B3 benchmarking. It's talking about measuring and reporting city metrics, city establishments, city buildings, way to record energy usage in your buildings. And step 5 is basically proving that you've done energy measures or improvement within your city buildings, causing more efficient buildings within the city. So I'm just here to discuss. Any questions at all, I'd be happy to help the best way I can.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank Kevin and Mr. Mickelson for coming to represent the Water and Light staff and commission. I started this conversation about the beginning of the year. It's been out there since 2007. It was a big deal kind of when I was first entering onto the council, and I think we kind of looked at it at that time, and then kind of advanced, Nancy knows a lot about it, kind of advanced along the way of maybe doing it. And then I think we had some changes and things, and it kind of got dropped away. I reintroduced it because I think, number one, I think it gives us a great marketing tool that we talked about at Water and Light. Things that we're trying to do is get the idea out here that we are addressing some of these issues. We're trying to be energy efficient. We're trying to bring down some of the cost and waste that are in the environment of energy and water use and all those type of things. And this is it's a voluntary program, but it has a good, like I said, it has a good message. We can use it as part of our marketing. I appreciate Kevin going through and putting like some of the downside, or I don't even know if it's a downside, but some of the negative feedback from it, because like that Plymouth article does kind of say, it's like, we're not going to do what everybody wants us to do, and we're going to do it our own way. I take a little bit of that, because we want to be able to chart our own course, but I don't think this mandates that we do anything on any type of schedule. It does allow us opportunities and tools if we choose to go on to next steps. Gives us pathways, and like I said, possible ideas. I think if we went through, I think we'd be pretty close on the first. I don't know if you checked on the first two steps. I think we're probably already pretty compliant. I think, like Nancy said, once we start talking about, transportation stuff and some of the other stuff, it starts to get pretty expensive pretty fast. But then again, like I said, our progression rate and how we want to do it is always under our control. At least that's how I interpret it. I don't know if Nancy has a differing opinion or not, but I think it's something that's good. It's a positive message. It's a positive marketing piece. And like I said, if anything else, it joins us into a network of like-minded cities that want to be more proactive in how we use energy, how we use water, our resources. Thank you.
And another note too, off of Councilmember Demers here, it's a good way of recognizing all of our city officials and people doing the things that we are already doing in regards to this Green Step City program. Like he said, Step 2, we're categorized as a City A, which they're telling us that we would need to pass 8 best practices, and you can include past practices that you've already guys implemented. For example, LED lighting in our streets. That's what we're doing right now. More pedestrian-friendly streets. That's a plan in the future. Things like that. Planting trees along the spillway. Things like that we're already doing. So we would definitely meet the needs at that Step 2. It's that Step 3 there, where you would have to do the 16 best practices, and there's some requirements there. And I also do have a list of those required best practices, if you guys would like to look into it further, just so you feel a little bit more comfortable in the future when making a decision. So
I think it would be good to have those. Yeah, if you want to maybe just attach them to an email to all of us.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Has there been any other research or itemized listing of what, from the time they started the program till they've gone through it, reading how many of 124 cities, what the cost, has there been a cost increase, and what has it done to their planning for 10, 15 years, 20 years? And we're a little bit different too with Water and Light and city being different. Is that something that, can we get a like community that is in this program that's going to show what our costs are for the city's impact, and then be Water and Light's impact over so many years?
Yeah, I think it's really based on what projects you choose throughout the program, whether you want to do some things that are high cost or low cost. As regards to other cities, I guess we could really look into what Warren or Crookston or Moorhead, what they have done for high costs or project costs in regards, and see what type of return they got out of it. I know, like I said, it does correlate into the goal of reducing carbon emissions, and usually the projects for that is high cost, but you usually do get a good payback over the years for saving energy over that time, kind of like with our rebate program with LED lights or weatherization, things that you do in your homes.
You talk about required things. I mean, those required things, I mean, looking at that, is there an estimate out there what that actual cost is, the required things are?
Not necessarily. I don't think there is
Average.
anything specific on an average or any type of, I would have to look further into that.
I'm just curious, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're not have a required something you have to do, we want to know, well, might not have to do it now, but 10 years down the road we have to do it, what's going to cost, the citizens?
And forgive me for interrupting, but, part of it isn't, required is if you want to proceed down the step process, right? You can proceed, you can get to level 2 and stay at level 2 and not have to do anything else. Required would be if you want to get to 3 and do this thing, then there's a cost to it, So it's kind of like the way I look at it is, and Kevin brought it up, was, there is a recognition of the things that we've already done. And I think I am very proud of a lot of the work that this community has done already to become much more energy efficient, water conservative, all those type of things. And I think sometimes places get bad raps and we all hear all the negative thing of how everybody's, doing the wrong things as far as energy. But I think that we have been doing a good job. And I think part of this is to recognize some of that. The other good thing about this is there is a community component to this, to go along with some the mayor's talked about, is bringing people together. You have to form a committee, kind of a green step committee that Water and Light has said, well, would let Mr. Hatcher, be the staff person to staff that type of committee. And that brings people in from all over. I look at school districts, I look at, other private businesses trying to get together and think about how you can think about things on a community scale that might not just affect the Green Step City thing, but would really impact things on a city scale. Because we're not going to do it just on the public side. If you're really going to want to make impacts, you have to do it on the private side too. So it does do this. The other interesting thing is that, part of the restrictive nature of the financing of this, a lot of times like retroactive stuff, refits, reconstruction, that kind of stuff gets really expensive. Just because reconstruction, rehab is expensive. Where you might see some added benefit is into where you're expanding into new stuff. So we are talking about doing potentially a big project in the near future, with our arenas, that type of thing. You could, if we incorporate some of that into our design, you could, add some of those things in, I think. I don't know, I might be speaking out of turn, but, as you're growing, that's where you want to maybe add some of your new innovation and new cost into it. So, like I said, it doesn't. I can't see anything where it specifically hurts us. It just gives us some opportunity and some guidance. So,
And
One last thing too, when you pull up that list of 16, if staff could look through it in our commission, if it's a roadmap to stuff that we would have wanted to do, sometimes you're doing it on a local level and it's a little more trial and error. But sometimes when you line up with a program like this, you do create a roadmap that kind of streamlines your effort toward where you get the best bang for the buck. So if you'd run it up the flagpole once more, staff and commission, and if you honestly feel like these are steps we would want to take, these are naturally sequential things that we would want to do as a department, I'd be more favorable to it than if you'd say, I really don't feel we'd even want to do these things. I don't see the benefit. I don't see the positive outcome. But good chance it is a roadmap to stuff that we would have wanted to do anyway.
And just a last note, I was just looking into the required practices here. And a lot of it is just covering just comprehensive plans or basically collecting building information for the collection of energy usage and things like that. So it's mostly just a policy, like a list of policies or things that we could adapt if we wanted to.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective also, I concur with what Councilmember Demers is saying. It's a good way to showcase what we're already doing, and I think we're in a good place there. If you ever get into the more major projects, I know we've had a lot of discussion about that. If the payoff doesn't add up, then we just don't do those things. But it's also a good educational component, like they were talking about. You're going to bring people together. They're going to talk about things, maybe create some synergy and keep us in tune with what's going on. And the CERTS people are going to be very helpful to. They'll help us along. I mean, they'll do what it takes to keep the program going because it makes them look better as well. Only thing that the downside for me was when I read that resolution, it was pretty wordy. And so then it kind of tends you to believe that maybe there's some ulterior motive there. And so if we can maybe look at that, see if there's a way to limit our liability, so to speak, I don't see too many more downsides. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Helms.
Thank you. So as far as the water and light's concerned, then you're saying that you're pretty much in favor of doing this? Is that what I'm getting? That
I'm leaning towards the positive side of it. I guess I wouldn't want to be held liable for costs if us as a community didn't want to move forward on something. But I don't think it's at that point. I just think we need to. I know in the past, this program's been around a long time. I was involved with it in Crookston, and we did inventories of buildings and things like that. And if the payoff didn't work, we just said we weren't doing it. Ultimately, you still have that say. Maybe if we're talking about the arenas, et cetera, things like that, I would hope that it's not mandatory, but I think we'd have to read into that more, seeing if we join this program, are we obligated to do that? What's the wording on that kind of thing? Because that comes with a cost as well. But I don't think it's set up that way. It's been around a long time. There are only 100 and some cities, and I think they're just trying to they want to continue to build the program. I think the governor's office now is really into renewable energy and things like that. And so I think it's a good way to keep us on the map and have people know we're involved.
is the Water and Light Department willing to step up to the plate and pay the fees for this stuff that we need?
Well, we already, the commission already gave approval to have Kevin lead this project. So my thought behind that means that whatever committees or things we have to form, Kevin's going to take the lead and he's going to do the work. Ultimately, things always have to come back to you for final say.
Any chance Mr. Gallstead could be forwarded all this stuff just for review as to what would be our obligation?
And I will look at that in a little bit more detail, but when the presentation was before us at the Water and Light Department, I specifically asked the two gentlemen that were, or the people that were there, if there was any penalty provision, was there any mandatory cost, was there any true downside to the city entering into this, and their pat answer was no. You know, it's up to us. So if we did get a grant or if we did get a loan or whatever it is in this program, and we didn't continue forward to go to step 2, step 3, step 4, was there some type of a repayment policy, et cetera? And they told us at that meeting, no. I didn't look at it any further. I just took it from the question that was answered.
I have just one more thing, please. Is it Kevin? Is that what it is?
Yes, sir.
I apologize, but what's your title? what do you? I don't know you, so that's why I'm asking.
Energy and Customer Service Specialist. I took over some of the roles that Bonnie did when she was here when she was the Energy Customer Service Manager. So I handle a lot of the rebate program.
And so do you work for the Water and Light?
Yep.
I'm his direct supervisor. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, because I had never seen you before, so that's why I learned. Okay, thank you.
I think we have some things to look at, things you send out to everybody.
Yeah,
email.
definitely.
I guess continue to look at it.
Because the next step is to approve the resolution. And if you decide not to, then we'll keep doing what we're doing.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Move on to number 4, consider penalties for tobacco license violation. Chief Hilton's not here.
Yes. I think he voluntold a replacement.
Good evening. Recognize a few faces in here. For those that don't know me, my name's Jared Quanner, Patrol Sergeant with the Police Department. Like Mr. Murphy said, Chief couldn't make it tonight, so he asked me to sit in on the discussion. I have some of the same material that you guys have in front of you. If you have any questions, I will certainly do my best to try to answer them.
And I guess I can maybe give a little bit of background on this here as well. The tobacco compliance has not always been as front and foremost as the alcohol compliance checks have been. We haven't done those for a few years. We are starting the police department has started to start the tobacco compliance checks again, and we did have a failure. One of the things when he was looking through this is that there is really no clear penalty as far as what fine would be imposed for those who fail a tobacco compliance check. So with that, kind of I think what he wanted to find out is, his recommendation was, do we want to use some sort of matrix on this, similar to what the alcohol licensing fines are, or do we want to do a fine, or do we want to, those kind of things. So I think what he's looking for is, number one, is the council interested in setting fines for businesses that fail the tobacco license violations? And if that is the case, would the council be amenable to then him as the police chief to develop some sort of matrix of what that fine would be, similar to how it is configured for the alcohol compliance?
Would that come back to us for final approval then, once it's drafted? Yep.
Yep.
I think that's probably the best prudent way to go about, is have them presented with the penalties mirroring the alcohol, or I mean, what other way would you do it?
And I think it's just similar. I don't think he thinks that it should necessarily be as expensive as a fine, but some type of a penalty provision that escalates with additional violations. At the meeting yesterday, he also indicated that the individual that failed by selling tobacco to a minor ultimately was cited for that violation. So you've got the individual that got penalized, but not anything with the business.
So if we do something, this wouldn't, there's no way to retroactively, like that specific case is already in motion, right? You can't.
Well, all it would do is if we put it in place right now, you wouldn't get a retroactive fine. You would just basically have 2 and 24 months, if they violate it again.
I guess, and that's what I was wondering. So I would suggest just taking the alcohol one, and anywhere it says alcohol, just swap it out for tobacco, or, I mean, to me it seems fairly simple. But part of the question is like, so does this put that person on a timeline? Or it is now they get 3 offenses instead of 2, or, what I mean? Like, I suppose that you can't put them on a timeline because there was no timeline to start with.
Well, I think that there was a timeline. I just don't think that there was a penalty provision for that timeline. There's no fine. There's no fine assessable. They just basically say, we have this ordinance out here that says you can't do this. We just don't, and it says that the penalties will be established by the city council, but they've never been established.
Right, but I think, if I remember with the alcohol, we didn't have this matrix set up quite this way with, or we did, but it was a stretched out timeline. And then when we changed the timeline, there was one outfit that was grandfathered into the old one, so they actually missed the next step, and they actually got like 3 penalties instead of, they got 3 strikes to be out instead of 2 or something like that. But I would imagine it's the same.
Yeah, and I guess that would be the discretion of the council on the penalty. You're talking about the monetary fine as opposed to.
And then there's the other thing is, do we actually license, or do we have anything to do with like their ability to sell? Like,
Yes.
so it's similar to a alcohol license?
Yep, we can suspend their license.
So we
to
could
sell.
suspend,
Yep.
so I would, like I said, I would take that and anywhere it says tobacco or alcohol, replace it with tobacco and call it good. I mean, it's.
Yeah, and I guess
seems
the
like-
question was, is do we want the fines to be as severe as they are for alcohol?
Why not?
Okay.
I mean, that's my, but, I mean,
Anybody else have anything? There you go.
I'll work with chief.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
North Ave request for motor grade rental 2019-20 winter season.
Yeah, Jason actually, he apologized, he did get hold of me. He was planning on being here tonight, but he did have something come up that he did talk to me
Getting ready
about
for
that.
snow removal?
That's one of the things he wanted me to talk about, but yes. So he does apologize that he could not be here tonight. I said he was planning on being here, however. So with that, every year we look at getting a motor grader that we lease or we rent basically for the winter season. We've typically looked at the two providers that are here in the immediate area. One is Butler Machine, the other is RDO. RDO did say that they do not have a machine. They will not have a machine available for us this year, so we did not get a price quote from them. However, Butler did, and they are at $6,045 a month, which is actually $55 a month less than it was in 2018, and then 66 hours an hour after the first 50 hours. Jason has taken a look at this particular piece of equipment. He thinks it will do well, and he thinks the price is reasonable compared to what the rest are. So he'd like to move that on, request that be moved on to the council meeting for approval. And then the one thing he did want me to say there is that he is not very happy with the predictions coming up here later this week. This is significantly earlier than what they typically plan for. However, they are getting ready for it. The issue is that the motor grader that they would be renting here is not available. However, he did speak with Butler Machines, and they do have a machine available to them, a motor grader. It does not have the wing, however, and that they would rent it to us at the same rate. They would just prorate it for the amount of time that we would use it. But he's really hoping that he does not have to call them for that, because he wanted me to share with you guys that since we do not have snow on the ground now and the ground is warmer, he is hopeful that it will melt and we will not have to use the wings or the plow equipment at this particular point. So.
Oh, anybody have any questions? See none? Thank you, sir. Mayor, turn it over to you right now.
I've sensed a lot of hostility from you council members in recent weeks, and so from now on, I'll have my muscle with me.
It improves the corner a little bit.
So these two gentlemen are, first of all, over here we have Walters. He's 16 years old. He's from Latvia. He's currently a junior at Fisher Public School and is involved in football, Champs, which is Health and Wellness Club, and Yearbook. Now here we have Nofal. He's 17 years old from Indonesia. He's also a junior at Fisher Public School and is currently involved in robotics and Yearbook. Walters is a FLEX, which is Future Leaders Exchange Scholarship winner, and Nafal is a YES, which is the Kennedy Lugar Youth Exchange and Study Program Scholarship winner, which means both of them worked very hard, endured an extensive application and interview process, and earned a scholarship for this experience in America. These programs have more than 32,000 applicants yearly and only 3% acceptance rate. And not only did they make the cut, but they have to continue to do their best and are responsible for 3 leadership projects and a minimum of 50 community service hours while they are here in the U.S. They are expected to be positive student leaders involved in their host community and school and be exceptional representatives of their countries. And I would like to hear very briefly from each of them, starting with you, Walters.
Hi, I'm Walters. I've been here for a little over a month now, and I have to say that I love it so far. Everything that the cities have offered has been really great, and I've enjoyed it so far. I really like to compare the differences and the similarities between the countries and completely different cultures, and to add on the activities I'm doing. For the past 2 or 3 years, I've been doing debates in my country, and that has widened my knowledge and interest in politics and that type of thing. So I'm really thankful for being able to be here today and listen to how things are, how decisions are made here, and to compare it with how decisions are made in Latvia. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Walters?
Could he tell us a little bit about his weather in his country, like temperatures and snow?
How's the climate?
It's geographically we're pretty similar, except it doesn't get us as cold in winter, but we still experience snow when it gets to, I don't know the Fahrenheit degrees, sorry, but it's like -20 has been pretty much the highest that we get.
Wonderful. Okay, Nepal.
Okay, I never prepare anything for speech, but yeah. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's been an honor to be like a 17 years old high schooler to be sitting with professional government officials. I've been here for a month or so. And I've been liking it so far, but I don't know if I will survive the winter. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Noval, by the way. So I'm an exchange student from Indonesia, and my country is very different from United States. It's like day and night and night and day. We never have snow, and so this will be my first time experiencing snow. And I'm here to complete one of my project, which is shadowing a leader. That's why I'm choosing Your Highness, the mayor here.
Say that loosely.
He's a leader. So me and my buddy Walters will learn a couple of things from him, and it's been fun to see gentlemen like you making big decisions for the city. So thank you very much.
I'm just going to say, for having to sit through this meeting, they have to have gotten at least 40 hours in.
I will say this too, welcome, and you won't find a better mayor and a better council to sit in and listen to, because we do discuss and we get along and we talk, and it's great that the way we operate together. So I'm glad to have you.
Thank you.
They'll probably have to duck out before too long. We're about to wrap this up, and I know we're going into closed session, but I want to say thanks again for coming, guys. Good to have you. My muscle.
Thank you. All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Grassel. Second. Second by Riepel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned.